Let's talk calmly about what happened in Jungkook's last live, because there are things worth highlighting, especially if you're a Taehyung fan. The first thing is that, as on other occasions, Taehyung's name came up, and as expected, Jungkook reacted. When Jimin mentioned that Taehyung was exercising, Jungkook remained silent for a second, as if processing the mental image. That expression of his was one that didn't need many words, and it's not the first time it's happened to him. If you've been following his lives, you've surely noticed that Jungkook has that particular way of reacting when Taehyung is mentioned, especially if it's about something physical. We've seen it before. As soon as someone talks about Taehyung's body or describes it, Jungkook automatically goes into silent mode. And it's that kind of reaction that one only has when the person mentioned means something more. His face changes, like someone who can't help but think of someone special. Now, leaving that out of the way, there are things in the context that we also have to look at. Because yes, the live was clearly a company strategy. It's part of the job, but you can tell when they're trying to sell an image, in this case reinforcing the Jimin and Jungkook narrative just before the release of the new Are You Sure? It seems like everything is set up to have an impact, and that's no coincidence. Companies know what they're doing, and they know which combinations generate conversation. That said, we also can't deny that Jimin and Jungkook are friends. But the foot in the face thing was weird. It was one of those things you can see and think, this was clearly meant to create a moment. And Jungkook handled it with a smile, because he's working, he's fulfilling a contract, and those things show. It's not something that would be done in a context of mutual respect off camera. Nor would you do it with a friend, unless the moment really warranted it, and it didn't seem that way. Afterward, comments surfaced saying that Jungkook was making fun of Taehyung for using Tada's microphone. And honestly, that doesn't make much sense. Jungkook has used that microphone before, even when Taehyung was present. It wasn't meant as a joke. Sometimes people go too far with baseless interpretations, without looking at the full context. The truth is, Jungkook hasn't shown any signs of wanting to distance himself from Taehyung. In fact, quite the opposite. During that live, not only was it mentioned, but they also shared that Jungkook and Taehyung were training together. That says a lot. They're spending time off camera, doing normal things, like going to the gym or just eating together. Jungkook mentioned that they ate ramen and donuts. Those details are what matter. Because no one takes the time to mention those things if there's no real connection. It wasn't a passing comment, it came out naturally, like someone talking about someone who's part of their daily life. And if we follow the timeline, there's another interesting fact. Taehyung wasn't on the live because he was out with a friend. When he returned, it was over, so he did one on his own. After it ended, Jungkook came back online. He was alone, saying he couldn't sleep. It could be a coincidence, yes. But for those who see the pattern, it's not the first time one has appeared right after the other. It's as if they're seeking to remain connected in some way, even though they can't be on the same screen. It's not that we have to force a narrative, but we also shouldn't deny what we see. There's a relationship between Taehyung and Jungkook that goes beyond companionship. There's a trust, a mutual presence in their routines, in their words, in how they manage their time together. And we're not talking about theories, we're talking about things they themselves say or do without realizing it. We've said this several times, but it's worth mentioning again because it keeps happening. Whenever Jungkook is somewhere without Taehyung, his cell phone is always on his hand. And it's not just that he uses it out of habit or boredom, we all know exactly who he texts to. No need to mention names. In one of his last live streams, we saw him checking his phone several times, writing, and smiling while doing so. It was very evident that he was engaged in a conversation he enjoyed. It was obvious he was happy with whoever was on the other side of the screen. And if we've been watching closely for a while, we've seen this before. One very clear moment was during the travel show Are You Sure? There's a scene that has stuck with many, Jungkook on a video call with TAEHYUNG. They were both happy, relaxed, and seemed comfortable talking to each other, as if it were their safe space. The energy between them was very distinct, very much their own. What's striking is that these types of situations keep repeating themselves. When TAEHYUNG isn't around, Jungkook tends to retreat to his phone. He doesn't do this with everyone or at any time, but specifically when there's that distance between them. And the curious thing is that every time it happens, we see him following that same pattern. He's online, he texts, he seems calm. It seems like a way they stay close, even when they can't be physically together. It's not that we're idealizing everything, but there are very clear signs. And these aren't planned gestures, but habits that have formed between them. It's a dynamic that has developed over time, and that speaks volumes about the relationship they've built. No one texts this often if they don't have something real with the other person. And Jungkook, in that regard, has been very consistent. He may be on broadcasts with other members, like Jimin, who are clearly part of the team, but his attention is often elsewhere. And we're not saying that out of speculation, but rather because of how he behaves. He doesn't seem uncomfortable, but he's not completely present either. It's as if his mind is elsewhere, and his gestures say it all. His body language, his pauses, the way he smiles when he looks at his phone, it all adds up. That's why, when we talk about Taekook, it's not just about what they show publicly, but about those small details that end up being huge for those who follow them closely. Their relationship goes beyond the stage or what the company allows to be shown. It's constant, it's intimate, and above all, it's clear that it's authentic. Neither Jungkook nor TAEHYUNG have had to say anything directly, their actions speak for themselves. The way they seek each other out, care for each other, and stay connected even when there's physical distance, is enough to understand what's going on. And it's not something recent. It's a consistency they've maintained for years, regardless of what's happening around them. The important thing here is to understand that there's a story built on moments, not words. When they're together, the energy changes, and when they're apart, they look for ways to stay close. That need to stay in touch, to never let a day go by without talking, is a testament to how strong their bond is. And that's what many of Taehyung's fans value most. It's not a superficial relationship or one based on appearances. On the contrary, it's discreet but strong, without having to prove anything beyond what they already do naturally. The messages, the video calls, the gestures, all of it shows a love that doesn't need to be explained out loud. So Jungkook can be anywhere, on a live show or on a program, but when TAEHYUNG isn't around, there's always one thing they have in common: their cell phone. And not because he's distracted, but because he's in touch with the one who truly matters to him. That consistency, that genuine interest, is what continues to prove that their relationship isn't just a momentary one. It's real, and it's still there, even when they're not face to face. The way TAEHYUNG and Jungkook understand each other without speaking isn't something anyone can achieve. This has nothing to do with the habit of working together or with years of practice. It's a type of communication that can't be taught or learned. It's something that simply happens when two people are deeply connected. When they're in the same space, a different energy is noticeable. One doesn't have to look directly at the other to know what they're thinking. A small movement, a half smile, or a pause in the atmosphere is enough for the other to react. This way of communicating goes beyond any public performance or rehearsal. It's often said that artists do certain things because they're in front of a camera, that gestures and attitudes are there to keep the audience's attention. But when you analyze what TAEHYUNG and Jungkook do when the spotlight isn't on them, everything changes. The gestures aren't exaggerated or forced. They're natural. They're soft. They're real. Every touch they give each other, every glance they exchange, doesn't seem to be intended to be noticed. In fact, when they're most connected, they seem to forget about each other. This isn't something you see in every group or every couple of artists. What Taehyung and Jungkook have goes in a different direction. The most important thing isn't a single moment that catches your attention. It's the set of repeated situations that occur every time they're around each other. There are always signs, there are always responses. As if there were a routine built between them, unspoken, that is activated when they share the same space. Taehyung and Jungkook have noticed that this repetition of gestures isn't accidental. It's a kind of silent habit. A habit that is created over time, but only if there's something true behind it. And that's precisely what makes the difference. What there is between them is not the same anywhere else. It's as if their bodies anticipate what the other needs. It's not simple intuition. It's another kind of understanding. One that goes beyond the obvious. And that's why many Taekookers follow every moment they appear together. Because every detail, no matter how small, confirms what's already been built between them.